Hi, I'm Mike, creator of Zouz Incense, and I'm here to show you in this video how to make incense with our incense making kit. So inside the kit, you're going to get a bag of incense mix, about 20 grams of mix, and you're going to get a pipette, and you're going to get an instruction booklet. This pipette is 3 milliliters of, hold 3 milliliters of liquid. So the things you're going to need are a wooden board, or tray, or plate, cookie sheet, something flat and smooth, some water, and a bowl. So first thing I'm going to do is, I'm using a little bit of a larger bowl just to show you how this is done. I'm going to take the dry mix, I'm just going to put it right into the bowl. And then I'm going to create a little divot in the middle. And I'm going to add 7 droppers full, so that'll be 21 milliliters of water total. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you don't need to have gloves, but I find that they're useful in keeping the mix off my hands, and it makes it a little bit easier to handle the mix too. Because once it starts getting mixed together, it's pretty sticky stuff. So I'm mixing the dry mix in this bowl, and it might not seem like it's enough water at first. Get it till you get a little ball going, or a little wet piece that you can pick up. So maybe only like that much, and you can see most of the material still in the bowl. And I'm going to just keep squeezing this material together. That's how the binder works, is by being compressed with the liquid, it starts to bind with the other materials, and it starts to turn it into this really great clay. So it still looks like it's pretty dry, right? And if you were to mix this all together, it's kind of got a consistency like a cornmeal, kind of a dry cornmeal dough. So right now I'm just kind of pushing that main incense nugget into the dry parts of the mix, and then I'm putting it in my hands, and I'm kind of wedging it together to mix it better. So you kind of really need to mix it with your hands real well. Under a lot of pressure. Until all the mix is incorporated. So if you don't wedge this properly, if you don't mix it well, it's not going to have the same consistency. It's still going to be kind of crumbly. So it's very, very important to wedge it. Mix it really thoroughly. And this is the point when it's pretty much there now. And I don't really need my bowl anymore. So this is an important part. So I've pretty much got it all into this ball, but I want to mix that even more because there's parts that are dry, parts that are not dry, and there's a lot of cracks on the outside of this. So I'm just going to keep wedging it really firmly between my palms until it gets to be an even consistency. So it's still pretty moist. And if it was still, this is perfect actually, this is working out great. I'm not going to add any more water. But I would not add any more water until I would get to this point. So if it seems like it's dry and cracking at this point, you might add another milliliter of water at a time until you got the right consistency. But this seemed to work out pretty good. And depending on which kit you get, you may have to add more water. But the one thing is that you don't want to add too much water. You can always add more water if it's dry, but you can't take the water out. So you want to be very careful about how much water you're putting in there extra. Okay, so that's nice and mixed. It's almost smooth, a little bit firmer than Play-Doh. Now we're going to talk about forming cones and sticks. So get a blueberry-sized piece if you're making a cone, about like that. And I'm going to form the bottom with this finger, my index finger, and I'm going to press on the sides with my other hand. And that's my cone shape. That's the essential cone shape right there. Now you can make it better. Now it looks small, doesn't it, right? So there's a few advantages to making smaller pieces of incense. One is that you'll have more when you're all done creating. Also, one of the main rules in making incense is you don't want it to ever be thicker than a pencil, or else it won't burn. So it's another advantage. And the third advantage is that if you have smaller pieces, they're going to dry faster, and you'll be able to enjoy your incense sooner. So just while I was talking to you, telling you that, I started making another cone like that. That one's a little bit taller. It's the same amount of material though, basically. Another blueberry here. So I showed you, again, I'm using the index finger to get the bottom. It's all about creating pressure on all sides. Now I can take this piece and I can roll it in my hand to make it thinner. The gloves are especially good for that. And now I can make a tall one. Another one that I could do, another way to do this, make your cone shape in your palm. So it's just basically like this, right? And then I'm going to take it and put it on the board, and I'm going to just gently roll it out. Now I could keep doing that, rolling these out and not setting them up to dry yet. And notice how the end is rounded. It's not really flat yet. I get the basic cone shape, and then I put it down on the board, and then I roll it out. Now I can keep doing that until I get a whole bunch of them. And then I can set them up all at the same time. Make sure you're drawing on a level surface, or else the cones will sag. If your mix is too wet, your cones are going to start sagging at this point anyways. So just a tip, if your mix is too wet, just set it down on a plate or a bowl, leave it alone for a half an hour or an hour, and come back to it, and it should have firmed up a little bit. You're going to have to wedge it again with your palms to do that. So I showed you how to make cones. Now I'm going to show you how to make sticks. Here's my last cone. So a stick, you don't want to use as much material, maybe more like a pea rather than a blueberry. And I'm just going to make a real gentle coil, and right now that's what it looks like, is about that. And I'm going to just work my way to the other end to try to create an even piece of incense here. And little shorties like this are fine. I'll do another one. Now when you're rolling incense, you might notice that it's cracking, it's falling apart. Part of the problem is that almost always the problem is that it needs to be wedged better. You see how in my other hand I'm always kind of keeping it pressed together. And it's fun to try to make them as thin as you can. And the advantage of making them thin is that they dry faster, and you might maybe even be able to light it that evening. Here's a real thin one. And like I said, it's better to have lots of little ones than really big ones. Like here, let me show you what's too big of a cone. This is probably about 4 grams in material. So that would be a little bit tricky to burn. It would burn only maybe halfway down before it would self-extinguish. It takes a little practice to roll it on the board because you got to get used to the right pressure. If you push too hard, it's just going to mush apart. So I don't really need my gloves anymore. I'll take those off real quick. And I'm going to talk about drying the incense. Wood seems to be the best surface because it'll suck some of that moisture out. What I'm doing is I want to make sure these are really straight as I set them up. And if I space them far apart, they're going to dry just a little bit faster. See, I remember I left the bottom unfinished, kind of rounded, so that when I press it down, it works really nice. So that's how you do the cones. Now, if you have sticks, you want to put them together when they're drying so that they don't warp, because what's going to happen is as these dry out, one side's going to get drier than the other, and it's going to start to curl a little bit. So with these kind of jaw sticks, you're going to have to keep an eye on them and turn them over every few hours if you can, if you remember, if you're around. They'll burn fine even if they're warped or curved. They just won't be as pretty. So when with the cones, it's a little different for the drying. You're going to wait about 12 hours minimum, 24 hours maximum, until they're inflexible. Like you try to move them from the bottom, and they don't really move too much. And then you're going to turn it over on its side because you're going to look at the bottom and you're going to see that it's not dry all the way through. And in fact, often the bottom will still be really soft and the rest of it will be pretty stiff. And then you're going to just turn them all over after maybe 12 to 24 hours, and you're going to let them dry another 12 to 24 hours. You might first check after 24 hours just to see if they'll burn. Something like this is going to dry within 24 hours, no problem. Might even dry within 12 hours. But the cones are going to take a little bit longer. So then you've got your dried incense pieces. What are you going to do with those? Storage is an important thing. So something like this, incense mix that has lavender in it or some other herb, is vulnerable to mold. So those organic ingredients, those leafy herbal ingredients are going to be more susceptible to mold. So you want to make sure that they're totally dry, bone dry, when you put them away, and put them somewhere where they're not exposed to light. You might want to put a piece of newspaper in there to keep moisture down inside the container, and there you go. Okay, so there's a few ways that you can customize your incense blend using the Zouz Incense Making Kit. You can substitute water with another liquid. You could use spirits, brandy, wine, other liquids that are aromatic or fragrant. Hydrosols are great too. And you can just use that liquid as a substitute 100% for the water. Maybe you're interested in essential oils. Well, I don't necessarily use them very much myself, but if I were, I would put in a few drops or one drop to this whole mix at stage 2, when you've got it all kind of mixed together. That's when you would put in a drop of essential oils. And those vary greatly in their potency, and some of them are not very nice for your skin, so again, it might be nice to use gloves when you're doing that. But some people really love essential oils and they want to use them. So there's one other thing you can do, and you can add up to 2 grams of another dried aromatic to the dry mix at the very beginning. So we use lavender and sage and then the binding powder in this mix. You might want to add, I don't know, Palo Santo or Cedar powdered. You can add up to 2 grams of those materials. If you're using resins, things like benzoin or frankincense or something like that, you want to use less than 1 gram for this whole mix to add it up. So really potent aromatics use a little bit less, but things like leafy, herbal aromatics, it's fine to use up to 2 grams. All right, so that's it for today. Thanks for checking out the incense making video. I hope you enjoyed it.